Imbolc. Hello, good evening. Welcome to the Mythical Ireland Library. This is Live Irish Myths, episode number 312. I am your host, Anthony Murphy. Please do feel free to join in the discussion in the comments. Whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, you're very welcome. Today is the 3rd of February, 2025, and it just so happens that our live stream this week coincides precisely with the cross quarter day, which is was anciently known as Imbolc in Ireland. And we're going to talk about the cross quarter day of Imbolc, the beginning of spring, the end of winter, the first of the cross quarter days of the year, whether you begin your year on the 1st of January as per the Gregorian calendar, or whether you count the beginning of the year as winter solstice. It is the first of the cross quarter days. It's the one I kind of like the most because it for us is demarking the end of the winter and the beginning of spring and the coming of longer days and all that brings with it. Anyway, more of that and on. If you are subscribed to the Mythical Ireland email newsletter, and remember, subscription to that is free, and it is not a service that will spam your inbox with multiple emails a day. At most, you will receive one per week. Today's email, which is going out as we speak, is all about this subject. So if you're not already subscribed, please do feel free to subscribe to the email newsletter, and I will paste in the link where you can do that. All you have to do is enter your email address, and you should receive a confirmation email or an email asking you to confirm your subscription to said newsletter. Most of the emails are long read articles. They're not short and sweet. They're usually long read articles dealing with specific subjects. And that list of subjects, of course, is not confined to astronomy, mythology, legend, folklore, and archaeology. But includes a wider scope outside of those. But of course, if you're familiar with the Mythical Ireland project, which has had its inception almost 25 years ago, 25 years next month, watch out for news of a special celebration for that. You'll know that it deals with stars, stones, and stories. Astronomy, myths and legends and folklore, and archaeology and monuments, but more specifically those of the Stone Age. Anyway, happy Imbolc to you all. Lá féile Imbolc go dtí mythological layer agus na tuaga layer ar fud na crunne. I'm going to turn off the heater. I think it's getting a little bit warm in here. Anyway, hope you're all keeping well. It's a public holiday here in Ireland, and that is courtesy of St. Bridget, who a couple of years ago in 2023, we had the institution or the inauguration of a bank holiday or a public holiday coinciding with St. Bridget's Day. Now, St. Bridget's Day is traditionally celebrated on the 1st of February. And we will, of course, explore to a limited degree the connections between Imbolc and St. Bridget's Day. I have done that previously, and there's some information on the Mythical Ireland website. If you're interested in pursuing that further, that's mythicalireland.com. And remember to use the search feature on the website. It's a very big website. There's tons and tons and tons, hundreds of pages and thousands of photographs. But you'll find what you're looking for if you're looking for something specific. The search feature of the website works very well indeed. So we're talking more specifically today about Imbolc and its origins and the astronomy behind it and why it might have been in ancient times an important time of the year. First, before we do any of that, we're going to before we do any reading and talking, we're going to welcome the Tua with a reminder that latecomers will have their names entered in the Black Book or the Obsidian Book, which replaces its immediate predecessor, which apparently posed absolutely no fear or threat to anyone, and that was the Lilac Book. So it's the Black Book now, and remember, if you're late. Now, I have to read out apologies. I got an email earlier from Anne McCallum, who says that she wanted to let me know that she would not be joining the live stream today because she's out of town. She says she'll catch up later, and she asks that we enjoy ourselves. And there is a big hello to Anne McCallum before we start. First to comment tonight, perhaps unsurprisingly, because she's always first, nearly always, is Elaine Dentlingenfelter, who says, hello, Anthony, and all the Tua. You'd love it here today. 25 Celsius, a nice light breeze and sunshine. Yeah, that sounds quite nice. Like that sounds like a nice summer day in Ireland. Hang on till I take a wee sup of the Guinness. Wayne Bird is saying, evening, Anthony. Hello, everyone. Happy Imbolc. I was reading that Imbolc was the 3rd of February and is considered the astronomical midpoint between winter solstice and spring equinox, making it the most accurate date based on the position of the sun. Well, I don't know what you were reading, but if you're subscribed to the emails, which I think you are, you'll get a very detailed breakdown of that. And I'm going to give you some of that anyway this evening. But you are absolutely right, Wayne, and good evening to you. I hope you're in good form. Rex Fortenberry says, happy Imbolc, everyone. Greetings from a cool/cold/warm/hot/humid /sticky/freezing/humid Louisiana. I think I've migrated to another planet. That sounds very Irish. I mean, the vicissitudes of the Irish weather, the capricious nature, the changeable nature of the Irish weather, that's can be summed up in those few words with the slashes between them. Rex, I hope you're in good form. Thanks for joining us. And Scott Doherty, I'm happen to actually be on time today. I think I learned my lesson last week. Hope everyone's well. Lots of snow here today. Wow. Snow. Yeah. I haven't seen a lot of that this winter. Touch wood. Hope we don't either, because I'm quite happy to proceed straight into spring and summer and warmer and brighter days. Tuesday, Thompson is wishing us a happy mythology bank holiday Monday. Thank you indeed, Tuesday. Happy Monday to you. Michael Pike is in the house. Greetings, Anthony and the mighty Tua. Happy Imbolc. Many happy returns. Michael. Pat Lako Connolly is saying hello from Vermont. A very good afternoon to you, Pat. Thank you for joining us, and happy Imbolc to you and all yours. Joe Butler is Auntie Joe is saying hello from Colorado. Partly cloudy and a very abnormal high of 21 Celsius. What is the weather doing in Colorado at all? My windows are open and I am flabbergasted. Well, I tell you, if the temperature went from freezing and snow to 21 Celsius in the space of a week or two, I would also be similarly glabberflasted. Wow. Kathy Maydeo is saying, hello, Mr. Anthony and Tua. Having a good snow here in Newcastle, Washington State, USA. 5 inches so far and snowing again. Hope all are well. Well, certainly a lot milder than that. Earlier on, it was 11 degrees here in the Boyne Valley, 11 Celsius. What is the temperature right now at Dublin Airport, which is 20 miles away? Yes, it's still 11 degrees. Wow. What is that in Fahrenheit? 51.8. Let's call that 52 degrees. Wow. So it's mild here. Judy McQueen says, hello. Good evening, Judy. Welcome to the stream. Mariana Dunn says, Banachty, dear Tua and Anthony from Alexandria in Virginia. Thank you, Mariana. You're very, very welcome. App to Fly Radio on YouTube is saying, although I have never been to Ireland, I love the place and wish I had been born there. Wow. You've never been, but you love it. Interesting. You love it from what you've seen of it and read of it on the internet and in magazines and books, maybe. Well, you should come here and make up your mind one way or the other for sure, and then you'll know whether you really do love it or not. Anyway, welcome to you. I don't think we've seen you before. And don't forget to subscribe to the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel if you haven't already done so that you'll be notified of future live streams and video uploads. Johnny Wilson is saying a big hello from Dallas, Texas. Hello, Johnny. Good afternoon to you. And I believe it's quite warm there, so happy days. Well, quite warm by Irish standards, perhaps not quite warm by Texan standards. Lynn Swan is saying hello and greetings of Imbolc. It's good to be back. Thank you, Lynn. You're very welcome. Many happy returns of Imbolc and the spring season. My favorite too, especially when the sun shines as it has done today. Well, it was overcast here in the Boyne Valley today, but we have seen some nice sunshine over the last few days. Tom King is in the house on Gowa. Well, Hello there, Anthony on the Mighty Tua. Imbolc blessings from the Forge of the Smooth Road. A significant celebration for the iron workers. Yes, indeed. Well, of course, Bridget being the patroness of blacksmiths. Yes, very important. May she bless your work today and always. Grace Walker says, hi all. Hello, Grace. Welcome to the live stream. Hope you're in good form. Brendan Byrne says, good evening, one and all. Happy St. Bridget's Day. Blessings to everyone. Happy belated St. Bridget's Day. Happy Bridget's Day bank holiday. And happy Imbolc to you. Unseasonably, says Adina. Yes. Maybe you're correcting something I said. Did I say unseasonable? Unseasonably, I said something, I'm sure. Grace Walker says, happy Imbolc. Many happy returns. Janet Moran says, hello, Anthony, from a pleasant weather day here in Boston. Looking forward to today's story. Happy Imbolc. Many happy returns, Janet. And good afternoon to you. Snapper Earl says, happy day. Burr Whelan is in the house saying hi to everyone. Gia Gwitch, Gia August Ban Gia Gwitch, Burr. Deborah Gilbert is saying, greetings. I'm in time this week. Happiness from Connecticut. Sunshine after the morning snow. Wow. It's still snowing in parts of the world. Kind of jealous, but then not really jealous, you know. Valentina Bernardi is saying, good evening from Glastonbury and Imbolc blessings. La Haile Bridge. Thank you very much, Valentina. Many happy returns. Barb Jordan is in the house. Hi, everyone. Hello, Barb. Welcome. Lily Shambles is saying, gotta feel bad for the Lilac book. I know. Yeah. Desiree Riley, are you watching? Comment quickly. Don't get put in the black book. Yes. After her mishap last week, I hope that she's in good form and well rested and recovered. I feel that no one can be late on St. Bridget's Day, even though it's not St. Bridget's Day, because that was the first. But hey, let's just extend it out to cover St. Bridget's Day, the bank holiday, and Imbolc, and let's just say nothing about whether people are, you know, I think she would yes, I think you're right. I think she would forgive us all. Oh, I must tell the master, I will be late next week. Doctor's appointment. I don't want to be in the black book, says Elaine. Yeah, doctor's appointments are kind of acceptable reasons for being late, and it's highly unlikely if you're going to the doctor that you'll be entered. I think it would be harsh to put somebody into the black book for having a medical appointment. Janet Moran is saying 38 Fahrenheit. What's that in Celsius? 3 degrees. Ooh, cold. Kathy is saying, happy Imbolc to all the Tua. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Northern California is having a lovely, cloudy, rainy day. 14 Celsius. Not too bad. After cold, minus single-digit days, today we're 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Spring is in the air. So that's, yeah, just a few degrees above zero for us. But hey, if it was in the minuses, that's definitely a bonus. Jacqueline Kelly Adams is in the house. Hello, all from the cold, snowy Pacific Northwest. Be safe and stay warm, everyone. Hello, Jacqueline. Thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure. Anna Mairead is saying happy Imbolc to everyone from the Highlands of Scotland. Thank you indeed, Bonnie Lass. You're probably slapping your face going, no, he didn't use a terrible cliche, did he? Thank you, Anna Mairead. Happy Imbolc to you. Catherine Cleary is saying, so happy to join you all from a beautiful day in San Diego, California. Wish I was in Ireland for so many reasons. Yeah, we wish you were here too. Well, hop on a plane and get over here kind of thing, you know. Grace Walker says hi and sends us a purple heart. Thank you, Grace. Happy Imbolc to you. Love Vrija to all too, says Anna Mairead. Yes, thank you indeed. Erin's Radiance Ogres. John Inman. Erin's Radiance Ogres far and wide, hence those who love from afar. Yes, I think you're trying to say that Ireland radiates beauty and goodness and love all around the world. And that, I have to say, I can't argue with. Tom King says, Janet Moran, thanks. I needed that belly laugh, Tom. Imbolc blesses to you. All 38 want to be remembered to ye. Kathy is celebrating the fact that she won't be put in the Lilac book, well, or the Obsidian book. Teresa Collins is saying the Black Book, just as I tune in. How's everyone in the tour tonight? Happy Imbolc to Anthony and all those who celebrate. Thank you, Teresa. A very good evening to you. Hope all is well down in Killarney. And I hope it's not too cold or damp down that part of the world. Mara Elaine O'Grady has joined us. Imbolc blessings, Anthony and Tua. Yes, indeed. Many happy returns, Mara. What a pleasure to welcome you into the Mythical Ireland Library. Yes, 11 degrees and rainy in Killarney this evening. We've got the 11 degrees. What we don't have yet is the rain. It looks to be on its way. So I'm sorry I mentioned it. But anyway, I think I mentioned it once and I think I got away with it. Anybody tell me what that's from? I can't give the full quote because I think that would give it away. But that second part of the quote is, I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it. Tom, could you borrow the Black Book and somehow let it fall into the forge by mistake? He could do that, and then I would have to reintroduce the Lilac book or just get another black notebook. Brendan, what are you trying to say? Brendan, you're never late. What does it matter to you anyway? You know, I don't think you've ever been in the black, red, obsidian, purple, lilac, green book in the history of live Irish myths. Mark Gordon is saying, good day from Iowa. A very good afternoon to you, Mark. Happy Imbolc to you. Yeah, texting without capital letters makes errors. I know. I'm a terrible texter. I can't type on a phone. I find it very tedious and I make loads of mistakes. So, yes, indeed. Can be arranged, Brendan. You two conspiring against the Black. I'm going to put you two in the Black Book for conspiring against the Black Book. For conspiratorial whisperings against the... No, okay, fine. Whatever about Brendan Byrne, who I've never met. Tom King, I just feel I couldn't possibly put in the Black Book. I have to look after friends. Rowan Grove, just a wee bit late, but you arrived just in the nick of time because we're about to start the episode proper. This is where we end the greetings. Well, the greetings don't end because people come and go, but during the live stream. But you've avoided getting into the Obsidian book for latecomers. Rowan, happy Imbolc to you and all of your friends and all your people who celebrate it. Astro is saying, hope all are well. Well, I can only speak for myself. And yeah, I'm good. Hoax on YouTube is saying, hello, Drogheda. Hello, Hoax. What an interesting handle. I wonder what your YouTube channel is about. Should I go and check? Welcome to Live Irish Myths. That's a different book, says Brendan. Michael Pike, Faulty Towers, Basel was out of control when the Germans were staying. Yes, indeed, exactly right, Michael Pike. Don't mention the war. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it. Yes, indeed. Brilliant stuff. Michael, delighted to hear that you are, if we haven't already had this conversation before, delighted to hear that you are a Faulty Towers fan. Now that I'm suitably tanked up with Guinness, let us begin our exploration of Imbolc. Good evening. This is the news. Why are there 4 sheets even though... Interesting. Hang on. One moment, please. Because there are 4 sheets. That's why. Right. So, just to reiterate, if you are subscribed to the Mythical Ireland email newsletter, today's newsletter, which is going out as we speak and should arrive into your inboxes over the next number of hours, is all about the subject that we're talking about on today's live stream. So it's coincidental that today, the 3rd of February, happens to be the cross-quarter day that we call Imbolc. Now, we're going to talk about where that whole idea of cross-quarter days and Imbolc derives and has its origins. And that is going to require a little bit of astronomical explaining. The wonderful thing about a live stream is you can ask questions and comment on the subject in hand as we go along. So if there's something you're not clear about, please do feel free to ask. And if there's something you want to comment on, please feel free to comment. We're a strange bunch. Ancient Ireland and faulty towers. Well, I know, but then John Cleese, and like I know that there are lots and lots of you who are fans of Monty Python, and we've mentioned Monty Python. In fact, some of our episodes have descended into Monty Python-esque farces, which has been deliciously funny. Yeah, Imbolc, but where does that whole thing come from? Well, let's talk about the astronomy of it, as to what the significance of Imbolc is. And then let's talk about the etymology and where that name is actually said to derive from. One thing I suppose that would serve as a bit of a preamble to all this. Liam Smith, blessing Imbolc, blessings all. Hello, Liam. Welcome to the live stream. Welcome and happy Imbolc. A preamble to all this is this is becoming a greater issue, as many of you will already know, especially those who've been watching over time. Lexi Erickson, just in the nick of time. Sorry I'm late. Not that late. Don't need the black book. The lavender one. The lilac book. Not the comfy chair. Poker with the soft cushions. The lilac book. Lexi Erickson said, I'm not even going to put your name in. You're not late, It's all connected. Monty Python and Faulty Towers. Well, what's the common thread? Of course, John Cleese in the case of Monty Python and Faulty Towers. Yeah, so something that's becoming a greater and greater challenge is, and even my body language, I hope, shows you tired of it. Misinformation and disinformation and AI and just the general spreading and propagation of bullshit and stuff that people have half read and misread and added their own little flavor to and all the rest. So you've probably today, especially because it's Imbolc, and since that was St. Bridget's Day, you've probably, if you're online and you're on social media, you've probably been reading at least a little bit about Imbolc and Bridget and spring and all the connections. And I do too, because I see it when I'm online. I spend much less time on social media now than I used to, and I can see that trend continuing because it's just slowly, maybe not so slowly, fast being taken over by BS, unfortunately. But you'll have seen all sorts of claims about both Bridget and Imbolc, some of which are true, some of which are only partly true, and some of which are absolute nonsense. So, as usual, with Mythical Ireland and Live Irish Myths, at the very least, if I'm interpreting, I'll tell you I'm interpreting. If I'm speculating, I'll tell you I'm speculating. If I'm stating facts, I will usually give you the sources. And they're to be found in abundance, especially in my printed work, my books. It's terribly frustrating. Every Imbolc, every St. Patrick's Day, every Bealtaine, every Lunasa, basically every time some day that comes along that for some reason was celebrated in Ireland, either in modern or ancient times or both, the internet becomes a seething, writhing mass of slithery snakes that represent all manner of information. Some of it good, some of it mediocre, and some of it terrible. Anyway, Brent Johnson is saying, "Good day." Hello, Brent. I wonder where you're watching. I mean, where in the world? You're watching on YouTube. Happy Imbolc to you. I hope you enjoy our episode. I suspect that human beings have been influenced by the patterns of the sky since time immemorial. At high latitudes, so I'm talking about Ireland, just to put you in the picture. We're here in the Boyne Valley, site of the world-famous passage tomb monuments of Newgrange and Louth and Douth, collectively known as Brú na Bóinne. Brent is in Oromocto, New Brunswick. Good afternoon to you, Brent. Thank you for saying hello from New Brunswick. You're very, very welcome. I hope you're subscribed to the YouTube channel so that you'll be notified of future live streams and video uploads. So when I talk about high latitudes, I'm talking about probably, I suppose, I couldn't exactly, when I was writing this, I couldn't exactly put a figure on it, but at least 40 degrees north of the equator. And that's because the further north of the equator you go, and this also counts for the further south you go, but I can only speak from a northern hemisphere latitude since I've only ever lived in the northern hemisphere. I've actually never been to the southern hemisphere. You know, the further you get from the equator, the further north you go, the shorter the days in winter and the longer the days in summer. It's amazing. It widens out. The difference in the angular distance between winter solstice to sunrise and summer sunrise gets greater the further north from the equator you go. So I'm speaking from a 53 degrees north of the equator perspective. That's my latitude. So when I say high latitudes, I'm talking about probably 40 to 60 degrees. And it may be a little bit lower than 40 and maybe a bit higher than 60. But bear with me anyway. Imagine for the moment that you're actually in the Boyne Valley and that is the perspective from which I'm addressing this. Brilliant stuff, Brent. Great to hear it. And you're very welcome. I hope you're subscribed to the emails. That's free, by the way. Today's email that's going out right now as we speak is all about Imbolc. At high latitudes, the Paleolithic hunter-gatherers of Europe could scarcely have ignored or overlooked seasonal changes in the availability of game and fruits and nuts as the sun waxed and waned in strength and elevation. So, in other words, even before the introduction of agriculture and proper settled farming, animal and crop husbandry, humans, well, at all times in history, we've had to feed ourselves. But before farming, before settled communities, when we were more nomadic, when we were more like hunter-gatherers, the availability of food often depended on seasonal weather, climate patterns that related to the altitude of the sun in the sky. In summer, that, you know, at this latitude meant the sun was high in the sky. In winter, the sun is low in the sky. The days are short in winter. They're colder. There's very little growth, if anything, in the winter. It's really in the spring at this time that you see that growth beginning. But anyway, the idea was that before settled farming, you know, the Paleolithic and Mesolithic populations of Europe moved with the seasons and moved with the availability of food. Later, when farming swept across the European continent, reaching its oceanic limits on the great western islands that we know today as Ireland and Britain, the seasons came into much sharper focus since they were seen to coincide with the patterns of land cultivation and animal husbandry. And by the way, just to put that in perspective, that sweeping movement of farming, well, farming as in the planting of crops in particular, began in the Near East, in the Fertile Crescent, probably around 10,000 years ago, and slowly swept across Europe, eventually reaching Ireland and Britain about 6,000 years ago, so about 4,000 BC. At some unknown moment of the past, farmers began to plan their agricultural activity based on the, in quotes, signs of the seasons, and more specifically on counting days or weeks, which were signposted by both sun and moon. So I didn't footnote this, and I didn't want this article to get laboriously long. So what I mean there is that the sun signifies the days, and we've had discussion of that on previous live streams. Can't remember exactly which ones, but we know that the very idea of a day, you know, in prehistoric terms, was from sunrise to sunset, and night being from sunset to sunrise, and that the full circumference, as it were, the full completion of a day in ancient Ireland apparently began with night. It began at sunset and ended on the following sunset. So the sun gives us days, and the moon gives us weeks. How does the moon give us weeks? Well, you may have watched my appearance on Dara O'Brien's, what was that called? The Wonders of the Moon on BBC, and more lately RTE, in which I explained that. You see, the moon goes through phases, but it goes through 4 distinct phases that are easily recognizable. Well, first of all, new moon or invisible moon, the dark moon, which we can't see, and then the first quarter, which is actually half a moon, then the full moon, which is the full circle, and then the last quarter, which is actually, you know, a half visible moon. And there's a week in between each of those. So, and then there's a month between each full moon. And that's where the word month apparently originates. Oh, excuse me. Got the hiccups. That's not good. I'm going to have to drink upside down. Month. And it also gives us the origin of the word mensis. Anyway, before I proceed, Veronica Smith is saying, hello, hello, hello. Body green covering eyes. I think there's some something lost in translation there in terms of an emoji. Veronica, you're very welcome. Good afternoon to you, or good evening to you, wherever you are. I missed where I go to sign up for the newsletter. Never fear. You can sign up on any page of the Mythical Ireland website, mythicalireland.com. You should see it on any page. It'll usually be down near the bottom. But there is one page specifically where you can go and I'm just going to share that again for Kathy's benefit, and anybody who's watching who's interested in signing up for the newsletter. There we go. And again, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Who else have I missed? I was shocked on my first trip to Era in the summer, says Rex. The sun coming up around 4 a.m. and going down 11 p.m. Winter comes up around 9:30 a.m. and goes down around 3 p.m. It takes a bit of getting used to. Yeah, absolutely. And that is how it manifests. The variance in the length of day at quite northerly latitudes is fascinating. And of course, when you go into the Arctic Circle during the summer, the sun doesn't set at all. You get endless day. But during the winter, in midwinter, if you go north of the Arctic Circle, the sun doesn't rise at all. Whoa. Dawn Hilton is late. Love from Pendle Hill. Dawn, I'm not. I've just decided, it being Imbolc, and you know, with the blessings of the season of St. Bridget upon us all, it would be very harsh to be putting people's names in black books. So you're welcome. And Lynn Murphy is also in the house. Hello, Lynn. Welcome to the stream. Always a pleasure to welcome another Murphy into the library. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. I signed up. Brilliant stuff. Great, Kathy May. And it's easy. It's really easy to do, as you've just found out. Actually, let me just check something. Yeah. Great. To do otherwise, in other words, so the sentence was that farmers began to plan their agricultural activity based on the signs of the seasons, changing things, higher sun, uh, increased bird activity, certain flowers coming into bloom, etc. And also, um, uh, they were counting days and weeks between, for instance, last solstice. They knew that the cross quarter day of Imbolc was approximately 90 days. Sorry, from winter solstice to spring equinox is approximately 90 days. So they knew something around 44 to 45 days after winter solstice would be Imbolc. To do otherwise would be a foolish endeavor, since crops grow best when there is an ample combination of sunshine and rain, and it is better to have calves delivered when there is sufficient grass to feed them and their mothers. Now, one thing that I haven't said there, again, because I didn't want this to get I didn't want it to get too comprehensive and too detailed. It would go off on too many tangents, as I'm doing exactly now. Is in modern agriculture, of course, I'm speaking about Ireland, and I know that this will apply to other parts of Europe and even to parts of the States, but especially Ireland in particular. During the summer, when there's good sunshine and rain and good grass growth, there's too much grass growth unless you have a huge amount of cattle. It depends on what your acreage is, of course. What farmers do in Ireland in the summer is they mow the grass and keep it as fodder, silage, to feed their cattle on in the winter. Do you know that the ground temperature has to be above 6 degrees Celsius for grass to grow? And because for a couple of months at least in the winter, and this varies from place to place, and it varies according to whether there's high pressure or low pressure, but so in the winter there's very little, if not no, grass growth. So farmers are able to harvest silage and put it into their sheds to feed their cattle through the winter. Great. But in prehistoric times, of course, before mechanized farming, it wasn't really possible to do that. So in other words, you timed the breeding of cattle and sheep according to the season when the calves would get the best benefit from the grass. Did I finish that sentence? And it's better to have calves delivered when there's sufficient grass to feed them and their mothers. Yeah. There can be little doubt that the annual movement of the sun was noticed by the first humans tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years ago. And of course, again, that becomes more pronounced as you move away from the equator, whether north or south. The further north or south of the equator that these humans were located, the greater the difference in the length of day between solstices in midwinter and midsummer. And so what I'm saying is that I suppose before the inception of complex spoken and written language, this is something that was recognized by people tens, but probably hundreds of thousands of years ago. Winters in Ireland, now I'm talking in the modern day, winters in Ireland are not necessarily cold. And we see that it's a weekly theme on the live streams. People usually tell us what the temperature is where they are. And we regularly see that the winters in Ireland, compared to other places at this latitude, are comparatively mild, especially compared to the harsh conditions endured at similar latitudes in, say, Canada or Siberia. But they certainly bring short days and long nights. So in other words, we're lucky in Ireland. We have the Gulf Stream, which brings a generally milder weather compared to other places that are at this latitude around the world that endure snow and ice for several months of the winter. How the Neolithic monument building farmers of 5,000 years ago endured an Irish winter is beyond my ability to contemplate. Long before the advent of such luxuries as running water, light, heat, and a solid roof over your head to keep the rain and wind out, And even that thing we call a toilet, I can only imagine that the people of the Stone Age were good sleepers. What must it have been like during those short days of midwinter and those long nights when you lived under a straw roof in a very flimsy and impermanent building, when your only light and heat were provided by a fire that you had to go and get wood to keep going. Remember, this is before we understand there was any extraction of anthracite or coal or anything like that around the world. Can you imagine whiling the time away in the long nights of winter? All I can say is they must have been good sleepers or good storytellers. Hang on, I'm missing some comments, so I'm just going to catch up. Samantha Healy, good evening, Anthony, Tom, and all the two. A bit late tonight. That's okay, Samantha. Happy Imbolc to you. Hope you're in good form. Joe Butler, Lexi, we've obtained an Imbolc forgiveness. No Black Book Day. Yes, absolutely. Rocio Mariana is in the house. Oh no, Mr. Anthony, I apologize because I forgot. I thought today was Sunday. Please, I don't want to be in the Obsidian book. It's perfectly okay, Rocio. We have decided to what's the word? To forgive. Forgive is a poor word. It sounds very Catholic. We have decided to dispense with entering names in the Black Book this week on account of the fact that it is Imbolc and it is the St. Bridget's Day public holiday in Ireland. Whew, I was going to lose sleep over that, says Lexi. You wanted your name in the book. Let's be honest. Veronica, me again. I'm in Kilkenny and I'm in my 50s. So don't know the meaning of emojis. Don't worry, Veronica. Come here. Listen, the rate of change in online activity and the way to do things is such that all of us are out of date. We can never ever keep pace with it all. So anyway. And yet to sleep through the night would be to miss perhaps the greatest of all the displays of nature, the night sky. Just as the position of the sunrise and sunset on the horizon and the height of the sun during the day indicated the season, the visible stars of the night sky did likewise. Now, I didn't expand on that for the simple reason that I wanted to focus on. This email, by the way, is 2,500 words, so it's still a very lengthy email. So I didn't want to make it unduly lengthy. And that's a subject for another day. Because remember that just as you can look at the sun, say you didn't have a calendar or a watch, and you didn't know what time of the year it was. If you have a sufficient knowledge of, observational data bank, as it were, just in your mind, remembering, all you have to do is look where the sun rises. Look how high it gets in the sky. Look where it sets. Then look at the stars at night. Look at where the full moon is, or even the first half moon or the last half, because they're all signposts to the seasons. And then look at what the trees are doing. Is there leaves on the trees? Are they brown? Are they falling off? Are there no leaves at all? And pay attention to the wildlife. Bird life in particular should tell you a lot about the seasons. And very quickly, you'll have a good idea what time of the year it is. Now, you may not be able to pinpoint the exact date, but just by watching sun, moon, stars, and wildlife, you'll have a very good indication without any recourse to a calendar or a smartphone or anything showing you the time or date. You'll know what time of the year it is. Today, as in the 3rd of February, 2025, is the halfway point measured in days between winter solstice and vernal equinox. Now, the reason I say in days is because, and this is something I haven't gone into detail on, because again, just makes it too detailed and too lengthy. You wouldn't measure the cross-quarter days by the, I went into detail about the pendulum, but we'll talk about that. You wouldn't measure it as halfway between the sunrise position of winter solstice and the sunrise position of equinox, because the cross-quarter day will not be halfway between the two. That's why you measure it in days. In early medieval Ireland, and perhaps in much more ancient times, this point of the year was known as Imbolc. Now that is spelled Imbolc. And there are, like as with all these things, it's not that there's no hard and fast spelling. It's that, and we've spoken about this in the past, it's that the ecclesiastical scribes, who by and large wrote down all of the mythology and the genealogies and the Denchenicus material, and even some of the scripture, of course, and some of the scientific documents of the day, oftentimes they were unsure of spellings of certain words and proper nouns. And even on the same page of vellum, they will spell them the same word 2 or 3 different ways, which goes to, I think, underline the uncertainty. So Imbolc, yes, but it's probably rendered differently. Imbulc, for instance, in different manuscripts. So there's not necessarily a hard and fast spelling of it, you know. Modern astronomers refer to this day and the others that mark the halfway points between solstices and equinoxes. So brackets, Bealtaine, halfway between spring equinox and summer solstice; Lughnasadh, halfway between summer solstice and autumn equinox; and Samhain, halfway between autumn equinox and winter solstice, as the cross-quarter days. This is modern terminology for an ancient concept. The quarter days are the solstices and the equinoxes. The cross-quarter days mark the midpoints between the quarter days. Easy, right? So think about it, and I know that many scholars have done this. So you could just draw a cross on a sheet of paper, as I have done there, and mark winter solstice, spring equinox, summer solstice, autumn equinox. And you have basically divided the year into 4 equal segments. But then if you further cross divide those, sorry, I can't do this on camera because it's just difficult to hold. If you further divide those by their halfway points, so they're the quarter days, the solstices and the equinoxes. And then these become the cross-quarter days. So we're here. I'll show you now. Pardon my scribbling. Yeah, so we're here. The halfway point in days between winter solstice and spring equinox is Imbolc. Halfway between spring equinox and summer solstice is Bealtaine. And don't let anybody tell you that that's pronounced Beltane, because it isn't. Not in Ireland, it isn't. And that's where that's an Irish word, Bealtaine. Halfway between summer solstice and autumn equinox is Lughnasadh. And halfway between autumn equinox and winter solstice is Samhain. And don't let anybody tell you that that's pronounced Samhain, because it ain't. And that's an Irish word. The quarter days of the solstices and equinoxes, the cross-quarter days mark the midpoints between the quarter days. It is a rather convenient and human way of dividing time and the year into segments. We are probably the only species on the planet that actually counts days and nights, and we are certainly the only species to give the imagined segments names. Now, I can't be 100% sure of that statement, but I'd be 99 point something percent sure of it. And remember, I do believe we're the only species that sings happy birthday to another member of our species or to an animal. I've been an astronomer and an astronomer. I have been an astronomer for more than 40 years. I first took an interest in the sky as a young boy and found myself mesmerized by the stars. Much later, beginning in 1999, so 27 6. It's 27 years now, isn't it? 26. 26 years would bring us to 20. No, it's 26, isn't it? Yeah, it's 26. Never mind. Don't mind me. My maths isn't that good. I began to study what we might call prehistoric astronomy. And that analysis revealed the likely reality that in the Neolithic, astronomy was a much more natural and observational affair. I mean, what else could it be other than be based upon what you could see rather than on what you could detect using modern telescopes and satellites and lab equipment and all of that. Today's astronomers know the diameters and distances of the planets, the sizes and distances of many stars, and the vastness of the universe. Stone Age astronomy consisted of what could only then be known about the sky, and all of that was derived from observation. There were no telescopes and, as far as we know, no universities, such that what was known about astronomy was what could be seen with the naked eye. I will readily admit that in the early years of my deep dive into the minutiae of Stone Age astronomy, I wondered why the cross quarter days might have been important, if at all, beyond being arbitrary, man-made divisions of time based upon counting days. So think about that for a moment before we proceed, because what follows will explain in more detail. Before you kind of get to think about it too much, the question is, are these just human arbitrary divisions of time? Actually, the Gregorian calendar is probably a great example of that. Our months, the way the calendar's configured, it has lost its natural connection to the year, really. I mean, think about January the 1st. January the 1st is 10 days after winter solstice. At least winter solstice is a day that you could hook the year on. It is a day when something, a time, it's not just a single day, but a time of year when something is observationally happening. The sun is standing still. Its rising and setting positions aren't moving from day to day. And don't mention, all of the other things as to why, for instance, the cross quarter days, which are slightly movable feasts in fairness, never, as far as I know, certainly with Imbolc never falls on February the 1st. And I have an article on Mythical Ireland on the website about, I think it's called Imbolc and St. Bridget's Day are not the same thing, and explaining why. Imbolc usually falls between the 3rd and the 6th of February. So my question was, why would Imbolc have been important beyond the fact that it just happens to be the halfway point in days between what were considered significant days in the solar calendar, i.e. viz. Winter solstice and spring equinox? When you study prehistoric astronomy, one of the most important things you must do is to lose the telescope. You must pull back from an eyepiece that magnifies distant things and instead zoom out to a more holistic view of the sky and its mechanics. In other words, to study the sky as it was seen, to see the sky as it was seen in the Neolithic, you have to lose the telescope completely and just look at the overall, as it were. It took me several years to do that, to see the sky without optical instrument aid, to see it as those distant Neolithic astronomers saw it. They were not just day counters, they were farmers. And even today, the farmers of Ireland are much more familiar with the signs of the seasons than the urban-based population. At first, I thought that the fact Imbolc was situated halfway between winter solstice and vernal equinox was the totality of its significance. It was, I naively believed, merely a consistent and predictable moment in time defined by the human need to neatly subdivide and measure the year. However, in time, I was to notice that the cross-quarter days are anything but discretionary and convenient fabrications that were derived from a man-made need to divide the year into apportioned segments. They were, and this became obvious through devoted observation of the year from the viewpoint of a Neolithic astronomer, times when there were noticeable changes in not just the elevation of the sun and the concomitant increase or decrease in its light and heat, but in the attendant effects of those changes on the landscape, on the vegetation, and on the animals that inhabited that landscape. In other words, like humans have been observing since time immemorial, the height of the sun influences what we call seasons, causes seasons, and the seasons have a concomitant or resulting effect on the landscape, causing an increase in growth or an increase in decay, or decrease in growth if you prefer. The solstices and equinoxes, on the other hand, seemed all the more inconsequential because of their occurrence in the midst of the seasons, that they were much better delimited by the cross-quarter days. What I'm saying here is the solstices and equinoxes fall generally sort of in the middle of the seasons, whereas the cross-quarter days seem to mark the point of changeover from the cold of winter to the longer days of spring, etc., etc. The solstices are the great hooks of the year, and I mentioned this earlier. The times and points at which the sun's daily movement along the horizon is seen to come to a complete stop. The equinoxes, despite the meaning of their name, equal night, i.e., when the days and nights are of equal length, do not really derive any great significance from that fact, especially since humans have only been able to accurately divide and measure minutes and hours for the past couple of centuries. In other words, we'd no accurate way of dividing the day into small units of time until we invented the clock and the wristwatch, or the pocket watch. The equinoxes are more conveniently a division of time, falling roughly halfway between the solstices. It is almost coincidental that at the time of the equinoxes, the sun rises due east and sets due west. Now, it's 6 weeks at least until the equinox. But I have an article on the website which is titled "The Equinoxes: What Significance Did They Have to Stone Age Astronomers?" And that is a semi-detailed look at the question of why were the equinoxes important, apart from being a neat subdivision of the year into quarters. And when people say, oh, well, the night and day is of equal length, that meant nothing to a Neolithic farmer, monument building astronomer who wasn't able to measure minutes and hours. And then people say, well, the equinox is when the sun rises due east and sets due west. Well, how do we know that that had any significance for a Neolithic monument building farmer? Especially because, as far as we know, they didn't have compasses. Yes, I'm certain that they divided the horizon. I'm certain that they had the equivalent of the directions, the cardinal directions. but that doesn't actually define the equinox. You couldn't define the equinox by the moment at which the sun rises due east and sets due west. And in any case, that position changes with elevation. So that's not even an adequate description. Anyway, I'll share that so you can mark that down for reading later on if you're interested. And that's the article that is called The Equinoxes. What significance did they have to Stone Age astronomers? But we are talking about Imbolc today, so let's not get too far down that rabbit hole. If you watch sunrises and sunsets over the course of a year, brackets, and are fortunate enough to live in one of those rare places where you can actually see the horizon unobstructed by buildings and trees, close brackets, you will notice that the sun moves along the horizon from solstice to solstice in a movement something akin to the swinging of a pendulum. It is not an even, smooth movement, which is what we might expect, since it is the result of the constant motion of the Earth orbiting the sun. So if you think about it, the Earth's motion around the sun, we know this now. I don't think the Neolithic astronomers knew this. We can't assume that they either knew it or didn't know it, but I don't think they knew it. That motion is at a steady rate. It's constant. The Earth doesn't put the brakes on and then speed up and slow down. Okay, it moves in an ellipse around the sun. So, and Kepler and Isaac Newton and all that. Yes, there are, with an ellipse, there are points of slightly faster movement and slightly slower movement. The general picture is that you would imagine that movement would translate into a smooth up and down the horizon movement. If you're watching the sunrises every day, it should translate, you would think. Just like the pendulum, the sun slows down and comes to a stop at both extremities. Now, we've spoken about this on many a live stream, and all my live streams that over the last 4 or 5 years that have dealt with this solstices, equinoxes, and cross-quarter dates have probably mentioned this fact, that the sun doesn't move evenly like that. It moves more like this. It's fastest in the middle, and then it comes to a stop, hangs there, moves slowly away, and then zooms along in the middle, and then slows down and comes to a stop again. And just think of it like a giant pendulum swinging, you know. It moves fastest when halfway between these two standstill points, i.e. at the time of the vernal and autumnal equinoxes. Watch that next month in March. Watch if you have a clear horizon, whether east or west, whether you're watching sunrises or sunsets, you'll notice that there's more than an entire sun width between the position of the sun each morning, whereas at solstice, it's barely moving at all. If you live in Northern Europe or in the Northern USA or in Canada, you may or may not have noticed one significant effect of this pendulum swing. For weeks, either side of the solstices, i.e., and I've taken sort of an arbitrary example here, from late November to the 21st of December, or from the 21st of December until mid to late January, the length of day does not change dramatically. Now, it does change, but it doesn't change dramatically. By contrast, in the weeks before and after both equinoxes, the days are either lengthening or shortening much more noticeably. So just, I'm talking about keeping a diary here. I'll just read rather than explaining. If you have not noticed this before, then perhaps take part in a little observational experiment. Keep a diary for a few months, and in it, as much as possible, note the time of the sunrise and sunset, and calculate the total amount of daylight in between. And in this case, I'm not measuring daylight according to the brightness of the sky. I'm measuring daylight as the time from the moment the sun appears to the time that it disappears. Because as you know, daylight begins before sunrise and ends after sunset. If you do this for a whole year, the pendulum effect will become very noticeable, especially if you were to create a graph from the resultant data. If you had started your observations at last winter solstice, that is 21st of December 2024, and continued them every day until summer solstice, i.e. 21st of June 2025, you would see that the expansion of daylight, in the northern hemisphere at least, is not steady or constant. The days lengthen very gradually in the few weeks following winter solstice. And then, at Imbolc, there is a noticeable increase in the speed at which the day gets longer. If you keep a record over a longer period of time, you will see that the days are growing longer from midwinter to midsummer, but the greatest increase in day length happens at the vernal equinox in March. You will see the opposite for the latter part of the year, from midsummer to midwinter. Autumn equinox will mark the time of the greatest contraction of the daylight hours from day to day. Your observations will demonstrate one more thing: the fact that the cross-quarter days of Imbolc, Bealtaine, Lunasa, and Samhain mark the transition points, so to speak, between the periods when the sun is moving relatively slowly on the horizon from day to day and the periods when it moves at its quickest. In other words, the cross-quarter days denote the periods of the year during which the sun is about to speed up along the horizon from day to day or slow down. They're the kind of the buffers of the fast and slow movement, you know. Today, 3rd of February, is Imbolc, which is technically the first cross-quarter day of the year, whether you calculate the year from 1st of January as per the Gregorian calendar or from winter solstice. To calculate the dates upon which the cross-quarter days will fall, just count the number of days between solstice and equinox, or vice versa, divide by 2, and add the resulting number of days to the previous solstice or equinox. Since last winter solstice fell on 21st of December, so that's really weird. I've had one of these resets. It has been such a long time since that happened. We were in the middle of... look, the title of the stream has changed as well. I don't know why that happens. That hasn't happened in a long time. Anyway, before I proceed, I just want to make sure you're still hearing me and seeing me. What was that called? 312 Imbolc, the beginning of spring. Okay, that's back. Apologies about that, folks. Slight hiccup, shall we call it? Technical hitch. What was I saying? Yeah, so you basically add, to get to the end of the year, add 10 days, 21st to the 31st of December. Then you add 31 days for January, 28 days for February, and 20th of March, 20 days. You get 89. Divide 89 by 2, and you get 44 and a half. Add those 44 and a half days to the 21st of December, and you get the 3rd of February. That's how you do it. It's kind of simple. Am I back? Yeah, okay. Everything good on YouTube. We can see and hear you, Grant. Okay. Yeah, very, very strange. Okay. Apologies about that. We are now halfway in days between winter solstice and spring equinox. However, and the reason I keep saying in days is the sun has not yet reached the halfway point between its winter solstice rising position and its spring equinox rising position. It's not actually halfway between them. That's because of this slowing down, that the pendulum effect. If we lived in ancient times, long before the introduction of anything like the Gregorian calendar, we would be busy counting and marking off days, perhaps on a piece of stone, or by carving notches into a piece of wood or bone. If we failed to do this, or if we lost our counting device, we might not know when the exact day of Imbolc had arrived. But there would be signs. So I'm not following the comments lately. Desiree is in the house. Just popping in to tell you all the two hi. I'm driving back into town with a friend, and service is sketchy. I'll have to catch up later. That's okay, Desiree. Drive safely, and hope you're well. Connie is saying, "Thank you. Something has to be done to stop this." Not sure what that related to, Connie. My apologies. There could be a conversation going on that I missed in the comments, so apologies about that. From this day onwards, the sun's movement along the horizon from sunrise to sunrise would be seen to speed up. The days would get, I'm talking about if we're in the Stone Age and we lost our counting device, the days would get noticeably longer. In tandem with that growth, I know, you're asking, how do they know the days are getting longer? They've no clocks measuring hours and minutes. Yes, but you can still see it. You don't need to be looking at a clock to see it. In tandem with that growth in daylight, we would notice a marked increase in the amount of bird activity and the dawn chorus that heralds nesting season. The earliest attestation of Imbolc is in the 9th century document called Sanus Cormac, or Cormac's Glossary. Cormac spelt it Oimelc, O father I-M-E-L-C, which is a very different spelling of Imbolc. I'm going to just put that into the comments, just so that you can see it, exactly what I'm talking about. Oimelc. That's how he spelled it, which he said was the, quote, beginning of spring, unquote. Cormac's Glossary is known for its pseudo-etymologies, so his attempts at explaining the meaning or derivation of words or phrases must be taken with at least a pinch of salt. Cormac tells us that Oimelc, his word for Imbolc, comes from Oimelg, and that's sort of a compound. O-I-M-E-L-G, this time without, he calls it Oimelc with a C, but then Oimelg with a G. Anyway, never mind. Cormac tells us that Oimelg comes from Oi and Melg, i.e. yo milk, you milk, E-W-E, i.e. that, quote, that is the time that sheep's milk comes, quote, or close quote. In other words, just in time for lambing season in the spring. So he basically says that Imbolc, or Oimelg, takes its name from Yo's milk, and that it's tied with the beginning of spring. Now, while we cannot assume that Imbolc or Oimelg, apparently some people prefer to pronounce it Imbolc without an emphasis on the B, Imbolc. While we cannot assume that Imbolc or Oimelc was the name given to this time of year in prehistoric times, there is reason to believe that the cross-quarter days, including Imbolc, were observed and recorded in some of the Neolithic passage tombs of Ireland. So just before I go down that rabbit hole or get into that, I'm on the last page, so don't worry. Monica Regley is late as per usual. Wow. Better late than never is what I say, Monica, you know. Just to say that a lot, again, of what you read on social media and the internet will not actually make this very important point to you. You will read claims that Imbolc, as a celebration of the beginning of spring and the cross-quarter date, goes all the way back to the Neolithic. We don't know that it did. We can't prove that it did. We can only suppose that it did. So always bear that in mind. There's very, very little that can be said with absolute certainty when it comes to ancient Ireland. There are a number of extant passage tombs whose passages and chambers are aligned towards the place on the horizon where the sun would rise on the cross quarter days, and even at least one example of one pointing towards sunset on some of the cross quarter days. Notable examples that have a potential Imbolc alignment. See the way I put potential in there? Just because we observe the sun shining into a passage of a Neolithic chamber, or the chamber of a Neolithic passage tomb, should I say, doesn't mean that that's what it was intended for, first of all. And secondly, even if it was intended for that time of year, how do we know that there's any relationship between that and what later became known as Imbolc? Anyway, the notable examples are Dubh na Níl, the mound of the hostages on the hill of Tara in County Meath, which has a passage which is illuminated by the rising sun at Imbolc, and two of the cairns at the Loughcrew Passage Tomb Complex near Old Castle, also in the County of Meath. And I'm talking about those two specifically now. On Sliabh na Colley at Loughcrew, Cairn U has a passage pointing towards sunrise at Imbolc, and it is interesting and perhaps even remarkable that that passage also points to Dubh na Níl at Tara, some 24 miles or 38 kilometers to the southeast, which has the same alignment towards Imbolc sunrise. So in other words, kind of like a dual alignment. Cairn U at Loughcrew points to Imbolc sunrise, but it also points to the Mount of the Hostages, which in turn faces off in the same direction for Imbolc sunrise. Interesting that. On Cairn Bawn, the westernmost hill at Loughcrew, Cairn L has a similar alignment to Imbolc sunrise, also pointing at the ruins of a cairn on the nearby hill of Carrickbrack. Because writing only began in Ireland in the 6th and 7th centuries AD, we have no idea when the beginning of spring first became known as Imbolc. The first time that it's written down, as I said, was in Cormac's Glossary, late 9th century. So what's that? Late 800s, it's 1200 years ago. Nor do we have any certainty about any continuity of celebration of Imbolc and the other cross-quarter days from prehistoric times into early history and the written accounts of medieval times. What we do know with a fair degree of certainty is that the people of Neolithic Ireland had a special interest in the solstices. And of course, that's exemplified with the winter solstice sunrise alignment of Newgrange or Sheed Broga. And from that, we can speculate that they probably kept a calendar, watching how the waxing and waning of the sun through the course of the year affected the patterns of seasonal growth and decay. As farmers, they would have absolutely relied upon this knowledge for their agricultural activity. As farmers, they would undoubtedly have been acutely aware of not just the solstices, but of those times of the year that serve as distinct periods of change in the landscape and the resulting effects of those changes on livestock, wildlife, migratory patterns, and vegetation. While there is no hard and fast proof that Imbolc was sacred in prehistory, it seems almost certain that the Crow's Quarter days were at the very least noticed and that they marked times of important change in the agricultural year. And by the way, something I didn't specify in this article, but I'm just going to mention now, is the fact that Bealtaine, the cross quarter day marking the halfway point between spring equinox and summer solstice, is the time of year when the leaves, when the trees burst forth in a sea of greenery, when the leaves are seen to come on the trees. Lunasa is traditionally associated with the beginning of the harvest, and Samhain is that time of the year when the leaves fall off the trees. So Bealtaine and Samhain, for me, very distinctly are times when there is something dramatic happening in nature. Is that coincident? Is that coincidental? Is is the fact that the cross-quarter days coincide with that activity just coincidental? I don't think so. It makes every sense that the astronomer farmers of the Neolithic would have celebrated the coming of the longer days, and that the decay and sterility of the land would soon come to an end. In the weeks ahead, all things being normal, I inserted that into brackets, the land will burst into an extraordinary spurt of growth. And in tandem with that, animal, bird, and human life will be seen to enter a new phase of flourishment and renewal. Of course, the human aspect will not be so pronounced in modern Western developed society, since we have long ago learned to store food, and we can eat ripe pears and bananas, which not so much about pears. We can eat fruits that are not able to grow in the Irish climate at any time of the year. So yes, the human aspect may be a little bit less obvious. But I don't know, any of you live in Ireland or Britain in particular, notice an increase in the bird song in the mornings and the lengthening of it in the evenings. We've noticed that they're much more active than they were a month or 6 weeks ago, Oh, very late. Had a guest today, says Ulla Conrad. Well, that's okay. Given that it's, it's Imbolc today, and given that that is so strongly associated with St. Bridget's Day, which was a couple of days ago, and the fact that it's a public holiday in Ireland for St. Bridget's Day, I've decided that there's no names going in the what's it called? The Black Book. What's the word? It has momentarily slipped my mind. The names aren't going in the Black Book today, so don't worry. Monica forgot time. Wow. On the horizon, says Paul Campbell, perhaps I might see some of you at the rescheduled due to Storm Éowyn Galway Astronomy Festival hosted by Galway Astronomy Club this coming Saturday. I understand Anthony Murphy is speaking directly after lunch. Yes, indeed. Hope to see some of you there, including yourself, Paul. Don't forget to introduce yourself, and I'll be glad to shake your hand. I accept my name may end up in the Black Book, the Obsidian Book. See, I remembered it when I wasn't thinking about it. Not today, Mavanway. Thanks to the dispensations associated with Imbolc and Bridget, we've decided we're not going to do that today. Strange, though. Tara and Newgrange Lynn. What is that about? I'm sorry, I'm not. Strange, though. Tara and Newgrange. I'm not understanding. Maybe you might finish that out. Apple O'Day, who's watching on YouTube, says, I noticed the changes in the birdsong in Vancouver, British Columbia. Yeah, I've definitely noticed. They're chirpier. Sorry. They're starting earlier and going on longer. By the way, you may have seen if you're no, I'm not dispensing the book completely. I'm just dispensing for today entering names of latecomers. And anyway, let's all be honest. Entering the names of the latecomers was only ever a humorous thing anyway. I wish I could be in Galway this weekend, says Apple O'Day. Waves from the west coast of Canada. Wow. From the west coast of Canada to the west coast of Ireland. We went out to make a bonfire and collected reeds to make a St. Bridget's Cross. Working on it now. Brilliant stuff. Wow. Don't forget to show us the results of your efforts. If you've been on Facebook or Instagram over the past couple of days, you'll have seen that myself and Anne were treated to an extraordinary display of nature at the weekend. We went to see a starling murmuration at Loch Ennell in County Westmeath on Saturday evening. And I have seen starling murmurations before. I've seen one in the wintertime in Dublin City, but by God, nothing in nothing like what we saw in Westmeath at the weekend. A rough estimate, and it's impossible to count, even in the photographs. The sky you'll see from those photographs, if you're on Facebook, the Mythical Ireland Facebook page, or the Mythical Ireland community, and if you're on Instagram on Mythical Ireland, in the zoomed in photograph, the first photograph, you'll see that the sky is almost black with birds. And then you zoom in and you look and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, the numbers are vast. We reckon somewhere between 50 and 100,000 starlings. And then I read, where is, oh, can I show it to you now? Give me 1 second. Got a copy of this book while we were there. Beautiful book about murmurations by James Crombie. Who's James Crombie? Well, you may remember, no matter where you are in the world, you probably saw this. You may remember in, I think, the lockdowns, that James Crombie captured this amazing photograph of a starling murmuration on Loch Ennell, in which the starlings looked like a bird. And in this book, it says, in the introduction, I'm pretty sure, and I'm just going to double check, that there were as many as 250,000 birds in the, and that's an estimate, of course. Yeah, here we go. Many of these roosting locations have been used for as long as people can remember and are clearly very important sites for these birds. One such example occurs along the shoreline of Loch Ennell in County Westmeath. This site is home to Ireland's most spectacular murmuration and has been known to host up to 250,000 birds at its peak in early March. The murmurations begin apparently around December time, and they generally stop. Stop is probably not the right word. They generally peter out in late March. And that in itself is interesting, because surely that would have been a sign of the seasons. Starling murmurations, when the starlings are murmurating, it's winter solstice. And then when they stop murmurating, you've passed spring equinox. Roughly a good way of reading the signs, as it were, that we were talking about all evening. As well as counting days, you're also looking at the signs of nature, Adele Perth is in the house. Happy Imbolc. Many happy returns, Adele. Hope you're in good form. And of course, Adele is in Australia. So whereas here in the Northern Hemisphere, our Imbolc marks the end of the slow movement of the sun from day to day at winter solstice, for Adele, it's marking the end of the slow movement at summer solstice. The sun, for us, is going to start picking up speed coming north along the horizon. For Adele, it's going to start picking up speed as it heads south along the horizon and heads towards, eventually, Australian winter. Now, very quickly, because I'm going to finish now. Ruth Graham is saying, definitely noticed the bird song has changed remarkably over the last few days in County Down. Much more upbeat. Delighted to hear. Yeah, upbeat is a great word. Chirpy, as I said. Yeah, definitely noticed that. I made my Bridges crosses from last year's calendar. It's my annual January tradition. Wow. You should share those on Mythical Ireland Creatives. Here in the region I live in Mexico, this is Rocio. You can see how the swallows start appearing in the beginning of summer, and they make their little nests and fly away after the end of summer. Yeah, we'll have the swallows will arrive here in April, and they usually are gone by the first week of October. And the swallows are a funny one. When the swallows arrive in Ireland, you really know it's the beginning of summer. Love the birds singing. That the light shines through, Mr. Murphy. Lots of beautiful things, from lights to bird songs. Yeah, I know. Things to be kind of upbeat about in a world that seems a bit dark and crazy at the moment. Anyway, oh my gosh, that's so amazing, says Kathy. Catherine is saying, eat food within 100 miles of where you live. Anything else confuses the body. Yeah, I've often heard it said by homeopaths in particular that if you've got some sort of an ailment, the remedy for that will generally be relatively close by in the nature in the plant life of the area you live in. Wow, says Ulla. Grow up with that in the marshes in northern Germany. Today, only 1/3 of starlings left. The starling population is in decline all over Europe, and that's, I don't know. I think we're a big part of the problem. Thanks to the Irish Times, I got a large framed photo of a murmuration on my birthday. Brilliant stuff. Spring, Jim Bob Jim on YouTube says spring only begins in mid-March according to Irish farmers. Yeah, so meteorological spring begins later. But there are noticeable changes all the same at Imbolc. And the biggest of those for me is the increase in the speed of movement of the sun from day to day. Yeah, a black book amnesty. Anyway, it doesn't serve us all that well to be talking about putting names in black books. It sounds rather authoritarian, don't you think? Anyway, so that's it. There's more, and I mean, there's more on the website. So please do search the Mythical Ireland website for things like Imbolc and Bridget's Day and Cross Quarter Days. Don't forget, of course, importantly, to sign up for the email newsletter, because that's where you're going to get this and other long read articles that I think you'll be very interested in. Anyway, that's all for now. Next week we will return to P.W. Joyce, A Social History of Ancient Ireland. We are getting to the end of that book, so soon we'll be talking about other things and reading other things. Cy B is in there. I didn't even know you were there, Cy. Apologies. I'm not sure if you said hello earlier, but a very good evening to you and all our friends down in Limnach. Hope you're keeping well. But don't forget, especially, we've seen some newcomers this evening. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and ring the notifications. Click on the notifications. Some people on YouTube are not getting notified. And if you're on Facebook, unfortunately, Facebook doesn't notify most people. There's 82,000 followers of Mythical Ireland on the Facebook page, and yet only a tiny portion of those, a tiny fraction of those, turn up for the live streams. So what I advise you to do if you're interested in joining us every week is just to put a repeating notification in your Google Calendar or your Apple Calendar for every Monday. It's 8 p.m. Irish time, which generally coincides with 3 p.m. Eastern time and 12 noon Pacific, and obviously later in the night for Germany and Denmark and places like that. But just be aware that in March we spring forward at a different time than the US. So there's a couple of weeks of the year in March, and again in the fall back period of the year, where the time difference is not 5 hours between Ireland and New York. So that can be a little bit confusing. But if you put the notification in for the same time as you're watching right now, you generally won't go wrong. Yes, indeed. Here, Deborah Gilbert. Welcome to the newcomers. Have a good week to all, and we'll see you all next week. Linda, thank you indeed. Slán give, and don't forget to come back next week. Thanks, Grace. When is the Galway? That's Saturday, this Saturday. Saturday the 8th. Postponed because of Storm Éowyn. Melting. Bring on winter, I say. This is Adele. I'm melting with weeks of heat wave. 49 Celsius. Oh no. I just couldn't deal with that, Adele. You need to come back over here to Ireland. Wow, 49. Bloody hell. What is that as a matter of interest in Fahrenheit? 120. Jeez. Wet. No, I'd be climbing into a fridge. That's what I'd be doing. You know, I'd get a big stand-up fridge that's the same height as me, and I'd put the door open, and I'd kind of be stepping in and out of it. Oh, that's unbelievable. Tara Weston is saying hi from Ballyjames Duff. Hello and goodbye, Tara, because we're just finishing the episode. But don't forget that, especially for all the newcomers, that as soon as we finish, the episode will become available on YouTube and on Facebook to watch over again. And there's a full archive of all of the episodes. That's all 312 episodes on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel. Anyway, right. At least I caught the ending this week. Yeah. Don't forget to come at 8 o'clock next week, and you'll get the beginning as well. No problem. But anyway, bye. Oh, Erica Humberducey is here, and I didn't even know. So I'm sorry I didn't see you there. And hello and goodbye, as it were. Glad you enjoyed the episode, Burr, as I did myself. Anyway, all that remains for me to say is Ichawa, Kolosov, Slán go fóil agus tóg go bogé. See you next week. Happy Imbolc. Spring is coming.